morning. I'm Dave Ferguson, and this is the farm for my wife and I, Gabrielle Ferguson. This is a century farm that was passed on down through from my great-grandfather from the 1870s. So the family's been here since the 1870s. This now comprises 300 acres on this parcel of land. I've done a lot of rehabilitation in creek flats and back in the woodlots. We have an 8-acre Alice project with 5 duck ponds here we've taken back in the last few years. And in the woodlot itself, I have one of the largest populations of pawpaw trees in Ontario. We have a blue heron rookery back in there. And I do manage the woodlot for high-value walnut trees. And I have sold walnut trees for $5,000 a log. So management does pay off, but it does take generations. And let's begin the tour. I think it's a hard nut. So when you have that nut, when it's cross-fed, you don't know what the nut will express. This one expresses butternuts. So these are sycamores I've planted, more or less as a specimen tree. They are native to the area. Within 3 or 4 miles I can find sycamores, but I didn't have any on my farm, so I've been bringing them in for diversity into the property. No fence. This is, I think, a red oak I have coming in here, but the deer are always chewing it off. So finding old snow fence, and I've got some other mesh protectors in other places. But we learned once we get the snow fence around, phenomenal growth when I keep the deer off them. But these trees sat here for 7 or 8 years, put the snow fence on, and they start growing a foot a year or more. That might not be a red oak over there. This one is a red oak here. And up here I've got a great shellbark or shellbark. What's the big hickory? I call it the giant hickory, the big leaf. Yeah, there's 2. There's shellbark and shagbark, and bitter. It's not bitter, it's the big one. Has the big nuts on it. And I just refused to turn. That's that one. For years it sat down there, it's just a stub. And we finally got it protected, and now it's coming. And you can see some small. I'll just prune those off and keep the main stem coming clean. And hopefully the deer don't reach over there and nip that. And they have to. Even move this a bit more there. We'll walk over to the pecans for a minute. Then we can slip down the hill in a couple of spots. So we'll go up to the bigger pecans up here. Now the thing finally failed, or protected. They get all rotten, but the tree's big enough now the deer can't nip it. There's a certain height that they can't nip to eat off the buds. We still will put on bounce sheets from the dryer in the fall with thumbtacks to keep the bucks from rubbing these, because the bucks will rub them with their antlers and strip the bark off. So the bounce sheets has a smell they don't like. Thumbtack and a bounce sheet, and the bucks will leave it alone. I don't know. If the prairie grasses fall down, they thought when they planted them they'd have bunch grasses staying up for wildlife like pheasants and rabbits. We get enough snow, it lays it mostly down. It doesn't really provide the cover they thought it would at the time. And you have big blue grass, and you have little blue, and you have Indian grass. That's the 3 main prairie grasses. The little blue stays shorter. The other 2 get tall. It was April, it got dry enough. I was able to come through my desk, and it helped. They talk about burning, but on the burning end of it, it takes people, it takes time, it's pretty dangerous. They don't really tell you that much. You can disc it. The prairie grasses are very deeply rooted. You don't hurt them. And when you go through with the disc, I might only just move a bit of dirt, because that's quite a mat to cut through with an old set of discs. But a little bit of dirt might show. And again, that's a little spot for that flower seed to get into. Doesn't take much. Sometimes getting a dog driven. So in this part here, when we did the Alice project, and that went in about 3 years ago, there's a tile drain came down this hill. It's actually dumping down the hill. We have a pond here for Alice off to our left. So we put a catchment area in to catch the water, with a catch basin, take the water down and direct it to the pond. Avoid the erosion, and also just to get it down so we can take my equipment across for maintenance on the property. But it works very well. The water comes down, it gets caught, goes in the catchment, direct it to the pond. I have grain and oilseed crops in here. I did not have pasture. There was tile in here. I cropped it. But they might get a 2-inch rain a mile north, and with water come down and flood the creek, water be up and down over my crop. I'd lose this pond is here because it started staying wetter and wetter. So I got to the point, dirt's moving, it's not productive. What do I do? This is the best option. So with Alice, I do get paid, and I get a rental every year. Not as high as a cash cropping price, but it's the steady income every year to do something with this piece of property, which was getting eroded and getting fragile. It's just a win-win all the way around to do that with it. We'll have the tree swallows and the barn swallows, both, just dipping and diving down through here. You will see other little, I'm not a birder, but there's tons of finches, other finch families, always down in through here all the time. We'll see wood ducks down in here. We'll see Canada geese, which I don't maybe care for, but I just love seeing the wood ducks and the others. So with the prairie grasses, the first couple of years of production, you come in and you have to nip them off high. You have undesirable plants will be coming in. And so I'll come in with a chopper. We're not down low. We'll stay up as high as the top of a pair of work boots. You just want to take the tops off. It could be flea bane, it could be other undesirables. For the first couple of years, you come in, cut it, you trim it, you have to do management with it. So even though I'm getting paid per acre some money for doing this, I have to do management also with it. Do you see the deer over there? There's 4 or 5 on that left there. You can see their white tails bobbing away. Come along here a little bit. You can see how this ground is staying wet. So it is changing the habitat of the field. And you can see the dogwood product in here are not as tall as down to the left where it's better natural drainage. If you're at the tail of this pond, you can see water in the neighbor's place over there. So it stays damper down through here. The old guy will front, wow, it won't make a difference. No, yeah, it can make a difference. Here's the time span. It does make a difference. I planted these as seedlings, and now the top ones will be 18, 20 feet tall. And that's within about a 13 or 14 year span. You can see a difference within your lifespan, within 1 generation of grandchildren. Coming there, I got a tree coming here. I got another tree coming. There should be one here, but they're always making, right? So another tree coming in here. And that's getting some nice size to it. Another one there. This one here might be dead. No, there's maybe, well, I'm not sure. Anyway, bring my lawnmower down and kind of keep things cleaned up. And I realized that I can't do that because bringing the lawnmower in makes a clear path for the deer to find the little trees. It's better off to spray the simazine type product around them, the Princep, kill the grasses, and let the broadleaf weeds hide the trees from the deer. And I've got 4 rows of trees here. And this is part of the Alice project that we did, and this is year 3 for these trees. The Conservation Authority came in and put them in, and myself. There's 3 or 4 different groups involved in an Alice project. Very rarely to get one group in here. And the Rural Land Stewardship Network, of course, planted the prairie grass. Because there's the other one up there, right? This is the middle. Somewhere in there would have been a tree. I don't know if I find it or not. Sometimes they just don't survive the first year. Anyway. And they would be too thick anyway if they all survived. You have to allow for some not making it. These are some walnuts, native walnuts. This is a sycamore, I think. Sycamore or tulip. Then they got bent over and some shoots are coming up. I may cut that main one off in a year or two and let one of these guys come through and establish as the main one. These are ash and they're still hanging on. That's a young walnut. Here's a hackberry. Oh, it's in there. You know, I really should cut him out. I like to have my walnut trees for production, so I should take that hackberry out to give this nice walnut room. But it's an orangey red, so there must be a spring color difference with them. Part of the farm here, probably in the 1950s and 60s, was pasture, and then I got cattle were taken off, and at that time, then the old pasture go to thorn trees, maybe some buckthorn, but in the bottom of that will be walnut trees come up. So I've been here knocking out the garbage trees, the buckthorn and the thorns, and you can see my tall walnuts starting to peek through, in the odd oak tree. There's a white oak over there. But now we're going to move into where it never was cleared off, move into the woodlot proper. So as we walk in, and you can look through the predominant species, we're on top of a gravel ridge here, but the smooth bark small trees are all hard maple, and a number of these will be black maple. When I come through in the fall and pick the leaves up off the ground, identify more, a lot of this area in here is black maple. On your red elms, if you take off any piece of bark and you break it, it'll all be red. The American elm, white elm, will have little white lines in there. So easy to tell by the bark that this is a red elm. There's no white lines in there on the different layers. It's all dark. And this tree's dead. There is no, I don't like to use it for furniture making. I don't like it. It can be brash, it can be splintery. There is not really a market in the other places for it, but it's phenomenal firewood. If you're doing firewood, it's phenomenal burning. One of my prized black walnuts. This tree's probably worth $3,000 to $4,000, and I could sell it today if I wanted to. But for retirement income, as I'm getting older, I want to manage my woodlots to have one or two of these prize trees per year indefinitely for myself and the next generation. So I'm not coming in to do massive cuts. I'm coming through selectively. I'll take out junk trees that should come out, and into the lot, put in one or two of the really good trees to pull the buyers in. To keep the woodlot managed, to give myself a retirement income for the next 20 years, but then to manage the next crop of trees for the next generation and the generation after that. The little shed has a loft in it. You can sleep two people upstairs. And the porch, the loft actually goes over top of the front porch, and there's a window up here. So they're sleeping for two. So on the ground there, most of the trees are white ash that tipped over from the emerald ash borer. Now, on the other hand, it's probably helped my woodlot out. I've lost some diversity, but it's reduced the basal area and helping to release some of the maple and some of the walnuts. In this day and age, nobody comes back to the woodlot to cut firewood anymore like they used to do in the 1960s and 70s and 1950s. We will go through into woodlot management. The farms are smaller. Farmers don't do that now. Very rare does a farmer cut wood. It might be a larger acreage. And the average age of farmers now is 63 years old in Ontario. We're not going to the woodlots with a chainsaw like we did when we were 35 and 40 years old. It's gotten wetter the last few years. There's an old Falls Creek bed down in there. Sometimes I'll find cardinal flowers here in the late summer. You can see a lot of dead trees happening. Some of these are maples, so it's changed in this flat. So the ash are dying, some of the maples are dying. We'll have to see what comes back in the natural regeneration, what happens down in here. So we have here in this creek flats, I have a lot of hard maple that are dying, and I don't know if this is natural. They get so big and they're too wet in the layer below them for what their natural habitat should be. This is not soft maples here. These are hard maples, and a number of them are dying and falling over. The different patches in here these are all little pawpaws. These trees have been here since the mid-40s that we know of. So were they brought up by indigenous on trading routes? We don't know, but they're here. And I have different plantations following the creek through the farm. I have the largest population supposedly in Ontario of trees in one area, because I could have hundreds in a spot. There are other plantations that have more fruit production by far. And so I'm trying to get some more sunlight to them to get more fruit production, to get them taller. In this patch, they'll all be off one tree originally. They colonize. So to get fruit off them, you need another patch nearby so the insects can go from one to another patch. But again, I've been in here knocking off some of the hardwoods to give more sunlight to the pawpaws that are in this area here. And I'll find out in 2 or 3 years how my little experiment's working. But they do produce better. They are an understory tree, but they don't produce fruit in the understory. They have to get up to get more sunlight, to get full sunlight, to get fruit. I don't know. But that's why I've knocked off the trees around it, is to give them a bit of room. But I don't know. There's 2 or 3 small ones there. I don't know how far the runners would go, or was there at one time a parent tree here somewhere. But this is a good sized pawpaw. They will get bigger to that size, but then after that I'm not sure what would happen. It might have to be in a different environment or more open. Fence in here. So the cattle never did get to the back of this farm. Whether it makes a difference or not with the wildflowers, but there's this general area here where there was the green dragon that Larry picked out a couple of years ago. I know they talk about the foragers can clean out a woodlot of leaks, but if people come in for a bed and breakfast and want to forage, 2 or 3 people, go up yourself. They never would decimate these populations. Damaged hard maple tree, and I've got to figure out, can I safely get that down next year, or do I just walk away, right? So I always look for damaged trees to take out to get some value out of it. But I have to consider what's a $200 tree worth for my life. So I'd like to see that top break off before I go after the main log in the bottom, because that's going to put pressure out on that tree, and then when it starts to fall, you'd have no idea what's going to happen. So I probably would stay away from that, from logging. wood duck. There's a cavity in that tree over there. What else are you hearing? Blue heron rookery. There's 3 dozen blue heron nests back in this area. So 3 dozen nests, 2 herons per nest. There's 50, 60, 70 birds back in here, coming and going. It's natural. The previous owner did not do any logging here. He left the bigger trees. They like beech. They don't really care for maple and the others, but their poop is so strong, after a number of years, they will kill the big beech trees. So I've done nothing back in here. I've dragged out a fallen tree or 2. The previous owner left the big trees. I've left the big trees. We will not cut down the big ones. And hopefully we can maintain the rookery back in here. But it's up to them if they decide to move it. But we'll try to do minimum impact. We leave the big beech trees. We will not log it. We will leave the big beech trees for the birds. Some trees have 5 nests in them. Some have 1 or 2, some have 4 or 5 per tree. I can see the bird standing in that one up in there. Come over to where I am. You won't see it with the camera. Can you see him standing? In this area here, the 36 blue heron nests. This time of year the leaves are coming on, but there will be young ones in the nests. So we minimum impact now. I'll come back in the winter to do nest counts when they've gone south. But we do not want to disturb them on the nests much. 1 or 2 people at a time could come in quietly in and out, but I want to really watch the impact of people on these nests and keep it minimized. But it is really neat to see. That's your pit and mound. So that's forming your pit and mound right there. I can't get a tractor back easily to get that tree. It's not high value, so I'll leave that. That's just a big basswood. You see there's more babies over here. So right now we're standing on the seismic trail that was put in the 1980s. Oil exploration companies came through then in the early 80s and they paid the farmers and landowners to put a line through the bush with little dozers. Came through later with 4-wheel drive pickup trucks and put down 3 or 4 or 5 feet down the ground small explosive charges. Then they would then blow them up and listen to see if there's any caverns down there for oil production in Lambton County. Lambton County is the home to the first commercial oil wells in the world, basically. Oil City, Oil Springs, Petrolia. They were the oil capital of the world at one time. And I live on, my farm's on Petrolia line. Petrolia. Still living, putting out leaves. So a smoother bark, a little more lighter gray. This is a butternut. So there's a rock elm back in here. He's live. And here's a rock elm, a small rock elm that is still living. probably an acre hazelnuts before, and then I ended up in the project, but I did move a bunch home. These are all hazelnuts, and some of the deer have been chewing off at the other farm. Didn't get any size to them. So now with this netting around them, in the next 2 or 3 years, they should increase in size quite a bit. These ones here, had them near my house at the other farm. The deer didn't get to them. So again, I'll have to prune them up a bit to straighten them out. And we'll have hazelnuts here in a few years coming through. Yeah, they're starting. They're starting to pop. This is a black gum. And that'll have a nice red flower, or red leaves in the fall. It'll be quite showy. Ohio buckeye. Squared the field up to make it more convenient for the guys planting and to get some gardens and some berries back in here. So in here in spots I have some, oh, what do I have? There's some blueberries, some goji berries, haskaps, that's what I'm trying to say. These are haskaps. I had them at the other farm and I transplanted them last fall. So these will come up with a blue berry on them. So they like to, they cannot have to have different species. So there's 3 or 4 different species in here. These are the flowers. And about what happens is that the birds, time they're ripe, man, the birds just come in and nail you. So you got to watch, maybe get some netting on them later on. I'll have to reach in and prune up some of the dead stuff out. So these are haskaps. High antioxidants. So now we're done the tour. I'd like to thank you for being with me this morning. And I'd like to thank Erica for coming along and doing the videography for us. We're here on Walnut Acres Farms, Gabrielle and Dave Ferguson and Brooke Alwinston.